The first story takes us to a small town in the Midwest, where a group of teenagers decided to explore an abandoned house at the edge of the woods. The house had been empty for decades, left to decay after a tragic incident years before. Rumors among the locals told of a family that vanished one Halloween night without a trace. The teens, excited by the thrill and fueled by bravado, entered the house with flashlights and cameras. At first, everything seemed quiet, the floorboards creaking beneath their feet, cobwebs brushing against their faces. But as they climbed the stairs, strange noises began. Whispering voices seemed to echo from the walls, soft at first, then growing louder. One of the teens swore he saw a shadow move across the hallway, but when he turned to look, nothing was there. They laughed it off, assuming it was nerves, until they reached the top floor. A cold wind swept through the hall, and the temperature dropped dramatically. One of the group felt a hand brush their shoulder, though no one was behind them. Panic set in, and they ran down the stairs, only to find the front door locked tight. It took hours for them to escape, and when they finally did, they discovered deep scratches on the walls as if someone, or something, had tried to reach them from the inside. The house still stands abandoned today, and locals claim that anyone who enters after dark can hear the family screaming silently from within. The second story comes from the East Coast, where a man shared his harrowing experience on a Halloween night that changed him forever. He had just moved into an old Victorian home, excited by its charm and historic character. The previous owners had left abruptly, leaving the house furnished but eerily cold. On his first Halloween alone, he decided to carve a pumpkin and set it on the porch. As he worked, he felt as though he wasn't alone. The sound of footsteps echoed from upstairs, but the house had only him in it. Assuming it was the old floors settling, he ignored it. Hours passed and he went to bed, but in the middle of the night, he awoke to a tapping sound at his bedroom window. When he looked outside, there was nothing, just the dark silhouette of trees swaying in the wind. As he turned back to bed, he noticed a figure standing at the foot of the bed, watching him. The figure was pale, almost transparent, with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through him. Frozen in fear, he couldn't move or scream. The figure remained for what felt like an eternity, then slowly vanished into thin air. The next morning, he found strange symbols carved into the pumpkin he had left outside, symbols he had never seen before. He moved out the next day, but sometimes on Halloween, he says he still feels that same presence lurking near his new home. Our third story is one that blurs the line between prank and horror. A family had just settled into a rural farmhouse, looking forward to their first Halloween in the countryside. The house had a long history, with neighbors warning them about past incidents, strange noises, objects moving on their own, and people feeling watched. The family laughed it off, chalking it up to superstition. On Halloween night, they invited some friends over for a small celebration. As the night progressed, children ran around in costumes, and adults enjoyed drinks and candy. Suddenly, the youngest child, a 5-year-old boy, began pointing at a corner of the living room, screaming that a man was standing there. The parents rushed over, but no one was there. Thinking it was just a Halloween costume imagination, they continued with the party. But then, more strange occurrences followed. The lights flickered, doors slammed shut on their own, and cold drafts swept through the house even though windows were closed. The boy continued to scream about the man, describing details no child should know. The man had a broken leg, wore a black coat, and stared at him with empty eyes. Panicked, the family called a local historian, who revealed that a man fitting that description had died in that very room decades ago, his body undiscovered for weeks. The boy's reaction was so precise that it terrified the adults. That night, the family packed up and left, leaving the house to its silent past, and locals say the man's presence is still felt every Halloween, waiting for someone new to acknowledge him. Halloween has always carried an air of mystery, a time when tales of the supernatural flourish. These three stories remind us that sometimes the scariest events are not just folklore or movies. They are real, and they happen to ordinary people in ordinary places. The abandoned house, the Victorian home, and the rural farmhouse are now infamous for their encounters, with witnesses forever changed by what they experienced. Many who hear these stories might be skeptical, but for those who lived through them, the memories are etched permanently. The fear, the unease, and the feeling of being watched are all very real. The first story's abandoned house remains a chilling example of how some locations carry the weight of tragedy. Locals often avoid the area entirely after sunset, warning outsiders to steer clear. Paranormal investigators have tried to document the phenomena, capturing strange sounds and shadows on camera, but nothing can fully explain the terror experienced by those teenagers. It's a stark reminder that some places are better left alone, especially on Halloween night, when spirits are said to roam freely. Similarly, the Victorian home shows us that even in the comfort of our own spaces, the past can linger. The man who moved in experienced first, and how energy can imprint itself on a location, manifesting in ways that defy rational explanation. He never returned to that house, yet the feeling of unease followed him for years. Psychologists might suggest sleep paralysis or hallucinations, but his experience felt far too vivid, too deliberate to dismiss. On certain nights, he claims he can still feel a cold presence brushing against his skin, a ghostly reminder of that first Halloween alone. The rural farmhouse teaches us that sometimes the most innocent eyes can see what adults cannot. Children are often more attuned to supernatural phenomena, and in this case the boy's descriptions were chillingly accurate. The parents' disbelief gave way to horror when corroborated by historical records, proving that the house had a sinister past. Even today, locals warn that strange occurrences are reported annually around Halloween, from shadowy figures to sudden temperature drops. The house stands as a silent sentinel of its own history, a place where the line between living and dead blurs for those unlucky enough to witness it. When you think of Halloween, you might imagine costumes, candy, and haunted attractions, but these stories remind us that the real horrors are not always staged. Sometimes they are hidden in the corners of our towns, in old houses, or even in the very walls of our own homes. It's a season where the extraordinary seems possible, where the veil between the natural and supernatural is thinner, and where our imaginations are fed by stories that might be all too true. The thrill of these tales lies not only in the fear they provoke, but in the lingering questions they leave. Could the teenagers in the abandoned house have escaped if they hadn't fled so quickly? Was the man in the Victorian home truly haunted, or did he attract something unknowingly by moving into a place with a dark history? Did the boy in the farmhouse open a window into a realm adults cannot access, or did he simply have a unique perception that others lack? These questions remain unanswered, but they add to the unnerving allure of these real-life Halloween horrors. Halloween's reputation as a night for ghosts and spirits is rooted in centuries of folklore and superstition, but the experiences recounted in these stories suggest there is more than just legend at play. Each witness reported phenomena that could not be easily explained, from untraceable cold spots to moving shadows, to figures visible only to certain individuals. Skeptics may search for rational explanations, but for those who lived through it, the terror was immediate, undeniable, and deeply personal. Whether you're a believer in the supernatural or a skeptic who enjoys a good scare, these stories are powerful reminders of the unknown. The fear they evoke comes from the sense that these events could happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. Halloween, as a date on the calendar, may be symbolic, but the encounters are concrete, leaving marks on memory, emotions, and sometimes even on the environment itself. The impact of these experiences often lasts far longer than a single night, haunting those involved long after the initial terror has passed. Each of the three stories shares common elements: isolation, the unknown, and a sense of being observed. These factors amplify the fear, making ordinary locations seem terrifying and familiar objects appear threatening. The combination of history, timing, and personal experience transforms mundane settings into arenas of horror. And while movies and fictional stories can entertain, the reality of encountering something inexplicable is far more unsettling because it challenges our understanding of reality itself. Halloween is a night when the imagination runs wild, but these true accounts demonstrate that sometimes imagination is not necessary. Real events can surpass fiction, creating fear that lingers long after the moment has passed. The stories of the abandoned house, the Victorian home, and the rural farmhouse are not only terrifying, but serve as cautionary tales about curiosity, the weight of history, and the unseen forces that may surround us. They are reminders that the world is far more mysterious than we often realize, and that some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed. As we conclude, it's clear that these three disturbing true Halloween stories are more than just tales. They are experiences that changed lives, provoked fear, and remain in the minds of those who endured them. Whether you are drawn to haunted locations, fascinated by the paranormal, or simply enjoy a chilling story, these accounts remind us to respect the unknown and to be cautious, especially on Halloween night. The stories may be from different places and times, but the fear they invoke is universal, a shared reminder of how fragile our sense of security can be when confronted with the inexplicable.